Всем здорово, парни, вот так нахуй живется у нас.
Donald Trump will likely make an ultimatum to EU countries to buy weapons for Ukraine. While Europe can replace some capabilities, others, especially critical ones, remain irreplaceable. One scenario for supporting Ukraine with weapons to deter Russia places the entire burden on Europe. This includes the scenario where Europe must purchase weapons from the US and transfer them to Ukraine. It is important to consider that over 30% of the weaponry currently used by Ukraine's defense forces comes from the US, as reported by Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Moreover, some items simply cannot be replaced. For example, Patriot air defense missiles can only be supplied by the US because Europe does not produce them yet. Notably, the construction of Comlog production facilities for GEM-T missiles only began in late 2024. Additionally, there is no clear alternative source for NASAMS missiles outside the US, which also affects the supply of AIM-9 and AIM-120 missiles for F-16 fighter jets. Europe does not manufacture HIMARS rockets at all. Meanwhile, the issue of maintenance and ammunition supply for over 300 Bradley IFVs transferred to Ukraine remains unresolved. This includes not only 25mm ammunition but also TOW anti-tank missiles. Furthermore, an even larger fleet of armored vehicles requires servicing, including over 400 Stryker APCs and 900 M113 S-barrel replacements for M777 howitzers are also necessary. And of course, Europe would also have to compensate for the halt in the supply of a massive quantity of artillery ammunition, an average of 1,155mm shells per year. This must be done with the understanding that Europe simply does not have cluster munitions. If Donald Trump's administration does not halt the deliveries that were allocated and contracted under Joe Biden, Ukraine will have a certain buffer of supplies. This includes the PDA ammunition packages approved at the end of the year, as well as the USAI, Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative program, which orders weapons directly from manufacturers. A significant portion of the funds under this program has already been allocated for ammunition production and delivery, which is expected to continue over the next year, if not longer. However, if we take a formal approach to assessing what Europe can and cannot produce based on weapon and military equipment types, almost every category can be marked with a plus, except for short-range ballistic missiles. France independently manufactures intercontinental and even nuclear weapons, along with long-range cruise missiles like the MDCN. But the real issue is not just capability. It is about production scale and a detailed analysis of each specific case. After all, for example, European countries seemingly provide themselves with armored vehicles almost entirely. However, not long ago, Poland and Romania purchased Abrams tanks. Meanwhile, vehicles based on the Ascod platform, Spanish, Austrian, and British IFVs, are produced in Europe, but by General Dynamics European Land Systems, a subsidiary of an American company. Regarding aviation, Europe has its own Eurofighter, Rafale, and Gripen. However, the Swedish aircraft relies on critical American components. A significant portion of the Eurofighter's combat capability depends on American AIM-120 missiles, because the integration of the long-range Meteor missile has been significantly delayed. At the same time, every European country that could afford it purchased the F-35, except for France, which remains perhaps the best example of European autonomy in weapons development. However, there are many more examples of European armies' heavy dependence on American weaponry. Thus, if Washington presents an ultimatum, either purchase weapons for Ukraine or not at all, the EU will have very little room to maneuver. On the other hand, such a scenario would inevitably push European countries towards shifting away from choosing American weapons and possibly reducing their reliance on US components in their own military systems. In the Kursk direction, birds are a big problem for Russians.
Всем здорово, парни, вот так нахуй живется у нас. Нас сейчас так кошмарило, это просто пизда. Короче, охуенно. Живем, кайфуем. День 4. Что?
Здесь сейчас ничего не летает, это нихуя не показатель. Двигаемся шустро. Смотрим под ноги.
Конечно.
Блядь, вы что? Говно ебаное.
День 4. По итогу мы нихуя дальше не продвинулись, потому что по нам не дебошит. Дальше туда мы пройти не можем. Просто тупо не можем пройти, потому что по лесополосе там они башки птички.
Successful liquidation of the Russian biker offensive. Russian forces have increasingly used motorbikes on the front lines instead of armored vehicles due to several tactical and logistical advantages. First, motorbikes offer greater mobility and speed, allowing soldiers to move quickly across rough terrain, evade drone strikes, and navigate areas where larger vehicles would struggle. Second, they are harder to detect by enemy surveillance, especially compared to tanks or armored personnel carriers, which are large and easy to spot with drones and thermal imaging. Another key factor is cost and availability. Armored vehicles are expensive and difficult to replace, whereas motorbikes are cheap, widely available, and easier to maintain. With Ukraine's precision strikes and drone warfare severely reducing Russia's armored vehicle stock, using motorbikes helps preserve heavier equipment for critical battles. US President Trump calls for Ukraine to hold new elections. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, or essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. The whole, I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also.
Following Scholz, other European leaders condemned Trump's dictatorial statement. Finnish President Alexander Stubb stated that he supports the Ukrainian constitution and the democratically elected President Zelenskyy. Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre called Trump's statement deeply unfair. Czech President Petr Pavel said, "It takes a great deal of cynicism to call the president of such a country a dictator." Zelenskyy pushes back on Trump with facts, not rhetoric. Zelenskyy, the U.S. has provided Ukraine with $67 billion in military aid and $31 billion in budget support. Trump's $500 billion fossil fuel claim isn't a serious conversation.
In total, the United States separately. In total, the United States of America has given us, as of today, around 6 to 7, I think, billion is what we received in weapons. And we received an additional 31.5, 67 is in weapons, and 31.5 is direct financial assistance to the budget. There were some separate programs. Certainly I am grateful for all these humanitarian programs, but you cannot count 500 billion. All this cost 500 billion and give us back 500 billion in minerals or something exactly. This is not a serious conversation.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.